Welcome, everyone. I am Carla Kalogeridis. I am editor of NAFA's FLEETSolutions Magazine. And with me today is Jack Geiser of Drivewyze. And Jack is going to share some thought, leadership, and expertise on a very important topic, which is optimizing driver communications. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Carla. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So when we talk about optimizing driver communications, tell us a little bit about what that means and what technology or systems that includes.
Unlike an office employee who you might have ready ability to communicate with them throughout a day, drivers have a limited bandwidth, mainly because they are on the road. So your touch points where you're able to communicate is a little bit limited. And I think, as more technology is added, the pace of business picks up, there becomes more to communicate to drivers, and yet the bandwidth doesn't increase with it. So I think the distribution of information and the technologies that allow you to do that in a very deliberate and concise way, geofencing is one of these examples, and where information can be stored at a location, which ensures that it's delivered to the driver at that point, giving them the ability to act on that information immediately.
What role does this kind of optimized communication system play in developing a fleet's culture?
In fleet management, I think, we hear a lot about safety culture. And I think a lot of that is due to the limited opportunities to kind of impart those training or lessons, that you really need a culture there so that a driver is can be prepared to adapt to the, changing conditions and know what that means. It, just carries something that's, you want to be top of mind with your drivers. So I think in finding ways to echo that messaging or that culture or that training and coaching out in the real-time operation as they're going throughout their day can really further that message and, again, give you another way to put that on the proactive side of your operation versus a reactive communication.
When you evaluate the effectiveness of a fleet's communication system, when you're called in to evaluate it, what are you looking for? And how can a fleet sort of self-assess their own communications and recognize where they may be lacking?
A lot of that communication we see, especially in trucking, is on the reactive side with coaching sessions, which again is an important part of building that safety culture. But when you're in a coaching session, that's typically a one-to-one, with the driver. Again, you need to take that time to do it, but it's also reactive. So identifying opportunities, understanding how you're communicating today, what's reactive, and then looking at that through the lens of, is there anything here that we can be proactive about? And I think the two things to look for are specific locations, customers. And this is where geofencing, by setting it at a specific location, ensures that gets delivered at the right time to the driver. If you've ever missed something at the supermarket, my girlfriend tells me, hey, grab milk. And I go later that day, I pick everything up, forget the milk. What I needed was the reminder right as I'm pulling into the grocery market, remember the milk. So I think there's an aspect of that with drivers, that they have a lot of routine throughout their day, and then a lot of it's unexpected things, adjusting to the road, changing traffic. So the time that you impart information to them, there'll be a ton of things they have to go through, both routine and non-routine, that can make that difficult for them to remember at the right time. So being able to store some of that in the real-time operation at a location goes a long way with helping that execution at the driver level.
What are some of the tangible, measurable benefits and cost savings that a fleet can achieve by improving their communications?
One example was a fleet that had recently installed electrical plugins at two of their main hubs. And they were trying to reduce idle time. But what they were seeing is they had these plugins so drivers could plug their trucks in, turn the engine off, and still run AC while they're waiting for a load. What they were seeing, though, is drivers were still idling on these yards. What they were able to do was set up a custom geofence alert that instructed the drivers once they're pulling into the yard, reminding them that they're electrical plugins. And they saw a significant change in widespread adoption from their drivers.
What is sort of a wrap-up question here? What is your best piece of advice for fleet managers today, right now, on this topic of optimizing communications?
With everybody, the pace of business is picked up. So there's more to adapt and more to change to. How do you keep up with that? Because when drivers run into change that they're not ready for, this is where frustration comes in. This is where you run into other issues. So this is where reactive communication can't really cut the bill in keeping up with the pace of business these days. So finding clever ways you can take some of that tribal knowledge, what you're seeing, and put that out into the operation. And again, you can be very short and concise when you're using geofencing as an alert or delivery system. Delivering that information at the right time alleviates some of that pain and change for your driver, because they're able to act right then on it. So it gives you a new way to reach your drivers and help them throughout their day.
Jack, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us on this very important topic. We're going to have your contact information show up on the video at the end here, and I'm sure you're open to NAFA members and the community reaching out to you if they have more questions about this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be great. And really appreciate you having me on today, Carla.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.